I really can't keep doing this. I've always had a love-hate relationship with sleep. Only a few years ago, I would stay up until the early hours of the night playing video games with friends. And then in year 12, I was typically an early bird, waking up at 5 AM almost every day of the school year to get up, get stuff done, and start my day feeling excited with the day ahead. This was the most productive time that I had ever felt, so this time I decided to take it even further and wake up at 2:15 AM for the next 30 days. To change my whole sleep schedule to another time zone, despite staying in the same time zone. This is my experience, and it wasn't what I had hoped for. After waking up at 5 AM for all of year 12, I saw the value in waking up early in order to get lots of things done. It might seem insane to wake up at 2:15 AM every morning, but this might be one of the reasons that people like Mark Wahlberg are so successful. He'll wake up at 2:30 AM and go to bed at 7:30. Studies have shown that sticking to a daily routine is associated with a higher meaning of life. So maybe this would mean that this experiment would increase my meaning of life. So why the hell would I do this? Well, earlier this year, I made a commitment to do Ali Abdaal's part-time YouTuber Academy. Unfortunately for me living in Australia, this meant it's at a really bad time for me really early in the morning. This was a great opportunity for me to try this experiment, to wake up earlier again and see how I could take it to the extreme even more than Mark Wahlberg by waking up 15 minutes earlier than him at 2:15 AM. And so I could see what he sort of goes through. Sort of. And I knew because these classes always started up at 2:30 AM, that's pretty much an accountability factor that's going to keep me going to wake up at 2:30. I had to be up no matter what, and I couldn't just hit snooze and go back to bed because I would miss that session. And if I wanted to get my money's worth, then I really wanted to attend these sessions live. Alright, so I'm going to take this a little bit to the extreme compared to Mark Wahlberg and wake up 15 minutes earlier than him. And that's so I can actually be ready to go by 2:30 AM. I need to go to bed at 7:15, and I'm gonna have to wake up at 2:15 AM. Alright, so let's just click done, and that's just gonna be for every day. One of the other things that I'm gonna have to change is my year light, and that's gonna allow me to have my lights turn on at 2:15 AM, and I'll be ready to go. So I've actually got some things to make it easier for me to fall asleep as well. So I've got my earplugs. These are basically just some random ones that my parents got me earlier in the year. Oh, and I've also got something that's a little bit more interesting. So I read up online that if I were to get sunglasses, I could actually block out the light getting closer to 7 o'clock. So this is just gonna prime myself to get less light when I'm preparing to sleep. I'm actually gonna just have to wear these sunglasses, so just wear these Ray-Bans inside. And it's gonna be pretty ridiculous, but it's something I read and it says that it helps with falling asleep for those who work night shifts. I also wanted to get a sleeping mask, which would just block out all the light in my room, but my curtains are pretty good already. I don't think I'm gonna really need it, but we'll see how we go in these first few days. This is basically the last hour that I'm gonna be up for today, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, Google. Good night. Very quickly, I noticed the lack of distractions. The lack of anything at all. Just myself up at the stupid hours of the morning and beginning my day. I had a lot of motivation to get this habit started and to prove it to myself that I could commit to something like this, but I didn't really know how it was going to turn out after 30 days of doing it. I knew that the first few days were going to be the hardest, having to adjust from going to sleep at 11 PM to 7 PM, and now waking up at 2:15 AM when I used to wake up at 8. And since it was during lockdown, I didn't really have a reason to be up any earlier anyway. The hardest parts of this were blocking out my exposure to light and the noise from my family and dog. Okay, so what I've actually found is that wearing these sunglasses in the last hour before falling asleep has done me pretty well. My family already thinks that I look pretty ridiculous for walking around the house inside like this, but I mean, I'm getting to sleep a lot quicker at 7 PM, so I don't see this as being much of an issue just wearing it around the house. Although, I have been struggling to get some quality sleep in these past few days. Usually I function pretty well on 7 hours of sleep, but I think that just because I'm inside of this transition period at the moment, I haven't really been able to get actually 7 hours of sleep. Usually it's a lot easier to transition your sleep schedule if you're trying to go to sleep later in the day. Now, unfortunately, I'm going the opposite way, which means I want to fall asleep earlier, so I'm going backwards. So instead of just staying up later than I usually would, I actually have to force myself to sleep earlier. So that's why it's really important that I have these sunglasses to make me feel tired and trick my body into sleeping. I remember the first night was actually the worst that I've had so far. So I found that I had to wake up at 10, 11, and 12 at night because I was in anticipation of missing my alarm that was going to go off at 2:15, and I really didn't want to miss that workshop as well. And I've also found that these earplugs, yeah, they're really not going to work. I can hear pretty much straight through them, and maybe it's just because these are low quality earplugs, but I've got a solution that I'm going to try out for the next few days. As much as I don't want to do this, one of the things that I have done before is using my AirPods Pro as expensive earplugs. Since they have that active noise cancellation, I think these are going to be really good. And I remember last time when I used these, I pair it with some rain sounds and then I can fall asleep pretty quickly. So I'm going to put these in tonight, play some rain noises, and hopefully this is going to fix up my problem that I had with using these earplugs. All right, I'll let you guys know how this goes. Waking up early has really given me the opportunity to set up a really good morning routine because I just have the time to do it. Like, I've been able to get back into writing daily thoughts on Rome research when previously I wasn't able to do that when I woke up at 8 AM because I always wanted to get straight back to work. I've been keeping up to date with all my habits, and by the time the sun even rises, I've got all the main tasks done before the day begins. The rest of the day now is just about getting more things done that are additional on top of the most important things that I wanted to do. These are things like checking email, responding to messages, or just going through some little things that have been sitting on my to-do list for the rest of the week. It also means that I get to enjoy my relaxation time a lot more, so when I spend time with my family or when I'm playing with my dog, I just have the time to sit back and relax a bit and not worry about having to get the next thing done. And that's because the most important work, like getting up to edit a YouTube video in the early hours of the morning, that's out of the way already. Usually I would get distracted when I'm trying to do meaningful work that's important to me, like focusing on that video edit. But because it's in the early hours of the morning, there's just nothing there at all. But at this time, there's no random notifications or a message from someone who's waiting on my reply. And so I don't have to impulsively act at all to those notifications. And this has really led to me having a really productive few hours in the morning when I can get that most important work done. The concentration and clarity in my mind that I've had during these times has been incredible. And so it's also been a lot easier for me to get into that flow state, particularly with work that I'm dreading to do. And so I can get that done pretty quickly. And then I look at my window for a second and then I see the sun's up. I've also found that starting with this head start against everyone else makes me feel a lot calmer by the time the sun rises. I feel a lot more ease at this point because on my journal, I always write, what's the most important thing that I want to get done today? And that would usually be done already. The only thing is though, this didn't come without sacrifice. I've had to sacrifice my time with family and friends, going out to parties, which hasn't been too much of an issue with COVID around, eating meals at the right time, and making sure that I was tired enough to sleep by 7 PM. I stayed up a few times over these past 30 days for some gatherings and events just because it would be really rude not to go to them. And let's just say, this didn't really work well all the time. So basically I'm just going to head off to the city to meet up with some mates, and we're basically just going to hang out until 10 PM or maybe even up till 12 AM. And I'm not really sure how it's going to work because I have to drive home and then wake up for the next workshop at 2:30 AM. I don't know where sleep is really going to fit into that, but it's just going to be something that I have to deal with because I want to wake up this early. I guess we'll just see how it goes tonight. And this wasn't uncommon with waking up at 2:15 AM in the morning. There were multiple days where after I finished the workshop, I felt so tired that I had to go back to bed at 4:30 and sleep for another 2 hours before I woke up again. I actually expected this to happen. There are always going to be those days where you can't always keep everything within your control. And so there's gonna be those times where you just have to bounce back from when these things occur. And so what I've really found is whenever these days pop up where I have to bounce back, it's one of those days where my habits are being tested at its most. So I knew for sure that the next day was the most important day for me to get back into the habit. Otherwise, it was just gonna get harder and harder and harder to keep it going. That's why I was actually okay with having these sleep-ins, although I made this challenge for myself. So we had a pretty good night. It's about 9:15 PM right now, and I'm feeling it. But I gotta drive home and get through that, and then I'll head straight to bed so I can wake up at 2:15 again. So I just got home, it's 10:21, so I'm literally just gonna walk straight back into the house and go straight into my bed. It wasn't worth it me losing sleep and making my health go down just to keep up with this arbitrary goal of waking up at 2:15 a.m. And looking at my stats, I would really only say that this only happened for maybe 4 days out of the whole 30 days of trying this out. If we actually take a look back at my stats for this, whole experiment, we can see that I was really averaging around 7 hours. Oh, and even a little bit earlier on in this challenge, I was averaging a lot less. And I can even see that on some days, I really got a lot less sleep than I really should have. So what we can start to see is that as we go through the weeks, we can see that I've started to sleep closer to the amount of time that I spent in my bed. There's multiple reasons for this, I think. I think one of the reasons is that I started to get really tired by 7 p.m. and so my body was adjusting to it. And my technique of falling asleep in under 2 minutes was working a bit better here as well. And now looking back at this, I would say that during the transition period, which is around 4 days, that was probably when I was feeling at my worst, and then I felt pretty good from there. While it was all well and good that I had this intention of waking up really early to be productive and get things done, there were a ton of sacrifices that I had to make during this. And to be fair, those sacrifices were way too much. It literally killed off my social life by the throat. I couldn't stay up to watch TV with my family. I couldn't eat dinner with my family because I always had to go to sleep earlier and eat earlier as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't get into bed by 7 p.m. And this meant as well that I had to decline a lot of things that my friends wanted to go out to because they would happen after 7 o'clock. I would always have to wear these sunglasses at 6 p.m. all the way until I went to bed just so I could block out some light as well. And I felt pretty ridiculous doing this inside, but that's just what I had to do to keep this challenge going. So it's really just not something that I want to keep up for a longer amount of time.
I'm actually really happy that I did try this out to see what the legends like Mark Wahlberg actually do in their day-to-day life. And of course I wasn't successful like Mark, but now I know what it's like, and I realize that this is not something that I want to keep up long term because it's really unsustainable, and it's not something that I want to try again. Or would I recommend it to you guys? Absolutely not. Don't even think about it. However, this has made me realize that waking up at 5 a.m. is going to be the next best thing for me to keep up, because it's sort of that balance between everything for me, that I'm able to wake up early to get things done, but also I don't have to throw away the rest of my social life. And so now the number one thing that I'm looking forward to is to be allowed to stay up past 7 p.m. Okay, Google, good night.